Emily Grace. Hi.
Hi.
So lovely to have you here.
I'm trepidatiously looking forward to it.
Yeah, I never, I think that's an honest response. I never know what's to come. I always just, bring on people and hope that we engage in, you know, heart vulnerable, brave spaces and see where we're at. So thank you for joining me here. For anybody who does not know who are you today?
Today, I am a dog mom.
Mhm.
We were talking earlier about how much we love our dogs. I'm a dog mom. I love Italian red wine.
Yes.
I love reality television is an
Can I
epic.
ask, like, what like, genre of reality television we're talking?
Bravo.
Okay.
And I have a business. I help actors learn to write and produce their dream role, which is something I'm very excited and love doing. But I
Mhm.
also sometimes that becomes the top and only focus. And I am a artist neglecting my own artistry often.
Mm. Yeah. Ooh, I feel that. I feel that. How is that how do you know that for yourself?
I mean, I think anyone who's a creative person has a pretty good relationship with their soul. And when your
Mhm.
soul is being crushed or soul crushing, your soul is dying. There I don't know how to point to the thing, but there
Yeah.
it's like, "Oh, I wanna." Or when I watch it comes out mostly when I watch something amazing
Mhm.
and I'm like, "I want that.
Yeah.
I wanna be doing that."
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to be then of service for others, for them searching for their dream is a really hard balance, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because I love being part of that process.
Mhm.
I think it's really humbling to for people to choose me to work with to
Yeah.
develop their ideas. I love inspiring people. I love seeing what they come up with and helping them make their idea better. I love that. It absolutely lights me up. It's like all the other, the mm, email, it's all the other stuff you have to do to run a business,
Right.
which is a lot, but it's like that is inspiring and exciting for me. And then it's also can be frustrating because I've got to write 50 more emails before I feel like I'm allowed to focus on my
Yeah.
creative stuff.
Yeah. Oof, I get that so deeply. Um, the the spreadsheet person of myself does not the light never comes on. Like, it has been out of order forever, and I've been, like, calling maintenance, and by that, I mean, like, anybody who would come in and help me with spreadsheets for a while, and I feel like until I understood that I would never go there. I just won't. Those are like my limits. I
Yeah.
do not like to put in spreadsheets, and I do not like to deal with I just don't. I do not thrive. And delegating another human being, and that meant a little bit of financial investment on my end in order to get it done, has been simultaneously difficult, obviously, because finances are a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
the relief to know that there is another person supporting something that I will never touch because I hate it so much.
Yes.
Like, how have you found the delegating while it feels hard?
I have a pretty good team. I think I'm pretty good at delegating,
Mhm.
but, then I go and hover.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's hard for me to totally let go of and trust someone else
Mhm.
to do it. And then the times when I have done that and then there were like mistakes or like a
Yeah.
major thing was missed, then I'm like, why did you do it? Kind of
Yeah.
reinforces my belief that I have to kind of
Hover.
control it, hover
Yeah.
and control everything, and
Yeah.
so that's that's been a journey.
Yeah.
And then from what you were saying about the spreadsheets, the thing that had to force myself to let go of is editing. I used to make all
Mhm.
these videos and edit them and editing my film, like, I hate editing. It
Yeah.
makes me feel like I'm dying inside. So if I have
Yep.
to edit something, like, it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have a line for editing now. It's will not be
Yeah.
crossed.
Yeah. It's so
Um,
funny. We all have these limits. I mean, back
yes.
in a former season of my life, I guess my thrival job, as I called it, was headshot photographer. I did that
Mhm.
for a while. This is before I went back to grad school. And I also ended up kind of veering into event photography. And I still do. I love photography. I love taking photos. I love headshot photography. You learn everything. A camera doesn't lie. You learn everything about a human being and you fall in love with the person in front of you because you see them as a human. And then when it came to the editing process, I was
Yeah.
like, I'm done here. And that's literally why I gave it up because in order to keep up in that industry, I had to learn to edit and I had to learn to like to edit. And I was like,
Yes.
I'm not willing to do this. And yeah, I had to say goodbye to that hat. And it's in me. It's in me, but it's like, yeah, that's my line. I won't so there's a relationship here that we both have to be to this
Yes.
stuff. I'm curious how you fell in love with and how you came to guiding artists to make their creations in this way. Like what drew you to this?
Yeah, it's been an evolution, of course. I started my business probably 15 years ago, I
Okay.
wanna say, and at that time, it was it was called the Reiki scene. So I was combining Reiki with acting, right? Get it
Okay.
seen, and
Yeah.
like all the website colors were like all the colors of the chakras, and so it was that's how I got into it, the Reiki scene.
Okay.
So it's evolved since then. I don't
Mhm.
offer Reiki as part of my services anymore.
Mhm.
So it's been a sort of a long evolution from that to really focusing on marketing, and then I was a co-owner of an audition studio for a while in LA, and it was really about a very specific technique. And then I decided to go back on my own, and it sort of it's evolved once I made a short film. I wrote, directed, produced, and starred in it
Mhm.
before I ever really learned professional writing tools. And I
Yeah.
had my acting training. It's like, "Ah, writing's easy. I know how to do this. I read scripts,"
Yeah.
right? Like, I thought this is gonna be easy, and it wasn't. It was really, really hard, and the film, you know, the big accomplishment is that the film got made, which is exciting and should be
Yeah.
celebrated, but I wasn't really happy with it because it didn't feel like my vision or my story. And I
Mhm.
like went through a program and they sort of tweaked and changed the writing and made me do all these rewrites and all this stuff. And I just didn't really know how to turn the vision I had in my head into a script.
Yeah.
And that sort of disappointment, that experience gave me a ton of confidence. Like, oh, I don't need help filmmaking. That part I
Mm.
completely understand and have confidence in, but I don't have any confidence in the writing.
Mhm.
And that led me to seek out a class with this amazing TV writer who taught a class. Like, it just made all of the writing tools click in a way that made sense to my brain.
Mhm.
um, and being in that environment and all of these people, well, Lauren, that's where I met
Yeah.
Lauren,
Amazing.
who we have in common, and I just
Yeah,
love.
Laura Knoll was on our last
Yes.
season.
Oh,
Amazing.
okay.
Yeah,
And an amazing filmmaker, like, learned the
correct.
writing tools and then went on to create like a bunch, and is still creating a bunch of amazing projects.
Mhm.
So that was the first step where I was learning it for myself, which is
Yeah.
very exciting for me. I was able to use the tools to write something that I felt very good about and proud of. And then I was already working with clients already. So, when I learn something new, I'm like, oh, let me show you this new thing
Mhm.
that I learned. So, of course, a bunch of my clients who were already actors were wanting to write stuff for themselves. And so that's
Yeah.
when I was like, oh, I can help you
Mhm.
because I learned all these tools. So that was sort of the beginning of how I pivoted. And now that's really the only thing I want to do. Running a business it's a constant evolution, and things that used to excite me that I used to teach, they don't anymore. And the
Yeah.
thing that really excites me right now is helping other people tell the story within them and giving them the tools to help them realize that that's possible.
Mhm.
That is that's what's speaking to me right now.
Yeah. When people come to you, are they already with a, like, ripe idea of what they wanna do? Or is it more, "Hey, I know I want to create something that is a vehicle for myself, and I'm open to discovering what stories in me can come out." Chicken or the egg, I guess.
It's kinda runs the gamut. There's
Mhm.
definitely some people that know what they wanna write about, and they're not really sure how to do that. There are people who know they wanna write, but they don't know what they wanna write about.
Mhm.
There are some people that really want to play a character that they feel like is gonna showcase what they're actually capable of.
Mhm.
And then there are some people who just want to make something because they don't wanna wait around for getting picked or getting that permission.
Yeah. I think it's such an interesting look into the way in which people seek out assistance. I only bring that up just because I have that often with, my clients as well, where like some people are like, I already have the material and I need it tightened. Or some people are like, I need the material. And then they come to me and I find them the material. And then we like just the access point, even though it's different, it's still people who really want to get in touch with um, the way in which they can find themselves in storytelling. And I'm curious about that as the lens, right? It's like sometimes we're like, okay, this would be a fun story. And then I just happen to be the one to write it. But when it's about like, I am the center, I am the thing, the, I guess what's the word? The engine that I want this thing to run on is like me. How do we, as artists, keep our egos in check? How do we access our vulnerability? How do we find the truth about what we want to say and how we say it when we make that decision?
Yes, that's a big questions, big
Yeah.
questions. I'll start with the ego part first. 100% of the people that I have worked with usually are filled with doubt and uncertainty
Mhm.
and wonder if anyone's going to care about their idea or if they can actually learn how to do this in the first place. So I
Mhm.
think for whatever reason, people that are resonate with my frequency and the way that I work with people, they feel a lot of doubt.
Yeah.
Um, and almost I've had some experiences of almost feeling like they have to apologize for the
Mhm.
story that they want to tell,
Mhm.
which I think is like, I'm glad that they came to me because I think everyone has something worth saying. Everyone has a story that has value. Everyone has an experience that is unique that also can be universal to
Yeah.
other people who are going through that experience. Um, in terms of like excavating yourself and getting to the truth, I would say that not everyone, but the majority of people that I have worked with over the past couple of years, they lived through something that was impactful that they want to turn into a film.
Yeah.
So they've lived through something that they need to process in a different way, that they learn something huge and they want to like share that message to more people. They went through something that is very unique, or they haven't seen this story told or told authentically, and they want to be the one
Mhm.
to tell it. So I think the sort of truth is what leads people to, like, storytelling is the most impactful tool that we have. It's based on truth. It might not be
Correct.
like sequential or 100% accurate truth, but the essence or the higher truth is sort of what we all resonate with in story, and why storytelling has stayed with us since the caveman days, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like we vibrate at that frequency, in that moment receiving that truth. So I think a lot of people are being guided by that truth, and they want to learn, like, where they struggle is like, how do I then add a container to this that I can present
Mhm.
in a way that, any film has a structure. Film have very certain structure that you should follow, and all of those sort of technical aspects. Um, but it's because of those technical aspects that the message can be received.
Mhm. When you were helping people create, say, a short, what is the structure that you are guiding them through?
In terms of, like, the script structure.
Sure.
So with a short, we work with a 3-act structure, which is the same structure as a feature. TV
Mhm.
pilots are very different. They are not 3-act structure, but a short film is a 3-act structure. Um, and some people have said, and I think they might be right, like, they found writing a short harder than writing a feature, because the
Mhm.
art form of the short is brevity. There
Mhm.
is no room to waste anything. Um, you have to get to the heart of your story, like, within the first minute, which
Yeah.
is very tough. Like, actors especially, we want to, like, lay all this story in the background, and let's do a flashback so you really understand the dynamics, and there's a lot of, like, breadcrumbs before
Yeah.
we get to the point, which it does not work for a short.
Yeah.
Everything has to have a setup and a payoff, and it's that brevity and sort of the one central question that I think is hard for people to grasp, because they want to tell so much more story, and in a short you really have to streamline and be ruthless with your decisions, so that not 1 second of that film is wasted on something that isn't relevant to the one
Yeah.
story you're telling.
And by one story, you mean the one question that we're trying to answer,
Yes, the central
or
question that's being
Mhm.
explored. Yeah.
Yeah, or the thing that we must learn or be enlightened
Yes.
by at the end of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've
Mhm.
got to set all that up, like, within 2 minutes maximum.
Yeah. So in this structure that we have in, say, a short, how does one build out or access a full 360-degree character human person that is the person through which this person, say, wants to be in their short?
Yes. So there's 2 tools that I help people with. There's a million ways to write a screenplay, and I teach what I think works. But the way that you get into it is what resonates with you. But so there's 2 things to focus on. The first is, there's a tool that I teach called the character square, which is directly tied into your structure. So there's seeds that you have to set up in the beginning. We're going to see this character pursuing a tangible goal. There's an internal conflict that they're usually unconsciously struggling with, and in the act 3 climax, we're going to see them overcome their fatal flaw to get the inner need. Those are sort of the structural elements that you need to set up from the beginning, and you build your film around that. And then there's another aspect where you really are deepening all of your characters, to make them unique and specific and compelling, and make us fall in love with them, and whatever their those fatal flaws and inner needs are what make us care about characters, even if they're doing horrible things.
Mhm.
We often find ourselves rooting for the villain, or rooting
Yeah.
for the anti-hero protagonist. So there's the structural development of your characters, which is a really important technical tool that ties into what's driving your plot and what your story's, like, really about, which is the resolution of those internal conflicts. And then there's, really deepening your characters, so that in an ideal world, your characters so well that they sort of just start telling you what they would say and how they would react,
Yeah.
which I think is such a great that's why I think writing is such an easy pivot for actors, because we know how to do that.
Mhm.
The character development is the easiest part for the actor. It's
Yeah.
really sort of the technical structure stuff that is new and you need to learn.
Yeah, I was gonna say that when I've written and been developing my own stuff too, I think that's been what I found is like, and I think I take it for granted too, just like how I'm not gonna I guess I'll toot my own horn, like how good I am at the characters. Like I don't think twice about it. It's like these people feel like 360-degree human
Yeah.
beings because that's what I know. That's my
Yeah.
access point. And then it's okay, well, now we're talking about this from a visual medium and things have to like not necessarily be said. You don't have a living room scene that can last for an hour. Like you need to like move this. Arguably, it's only lasting for 2 minutes. So
Right.
whatever you wanted to accomplish in that hour, like figure it out. Like so it's such an interesting muscle to be exercising. How can we distill what we know that we often take for granted because it's so deep in our craft and who we
Yeah.
are, and trust that that is a transferable skill into something else, and that brevity, it's the phrase that like more isn't always more.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes more is just more. Like more isn't necessary. It's just more. Um and that's such a hard lesson sometimes to be learned.
Yes, and it's like it's a lifelong struggle. Like to
Mhm.
I can't, I don't know where the quote is from, but it's like if I had more time, I'd write you a shorter letter.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to be really, I'm someone I just overwrite it. That's my process. I just
Mhm.
overwrite it. I let it be a monster and too many things so I can sort of get through the muck to kind of identify what it is I actually want to say and what matters, and then you can start trimming away all of the
Yeah.
unnecessary stuff. But like I don't sit down and just write and it's brief and efficient. It's a process of mess
Yeah.
and not being clear until it becomes clear in the doing of it.
Yeah. I think that's something that in this space we talk about often, of just like the process and really embracing that the process is going to be messy. And
Yeah.
arguably that is exactly the art creation. We're taught in most spaces that until there's a product, which
Mhm.
reminder, like that's associated with capitalism, like until there is the product to identify, then that is the barometer of success. Where it's like if you have
Yeah.
never written something beforehand and now you're sitting here and you've created something out of nothing, it did not exist before, and it's a huge situation of a dump out of your brain of all these beautiful ideas, and it's a monster that exists in many, many pages. Like that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And then you sit and you boil it down to, yeah, its essence and what matters to you, and the lens through which you want to story tell this particular story. But forgetting that the dumping is also part of the process is
Yeah.
robbing oneself.
And I think it's, one of the things that I say in my feedback groups is like sometimes you don't know what it is you're writing until you've gotten to the end of the first draft.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it just becomes, I think many people have this idea of like, oh, I need to know what it is in my head. So if I just think about it more, then I'm going to get clarity and then I can start
Yeah.
writing.
Hmm.
It's you start writing and then things become more clear, or you get feedback and a bunch of people resonate with the same thing and it
Yeah.
just starts to reveal itself in the doing of it.
Yeah. We talked about this with our episode with Isabel Pask. Like the episode is literally called like How to Start Writing. Like it's that. It's like we all have these gorgeous ideas. And even if we don't, we've been told something beforehand that we like lodged somewhere deep in the recesses of our brain that like somebody was like, this would be so fun. And it has something to do with you, but you're like, this is a fun idea. And it's all there. It's just a matter of like, how do you literally pick up your pen and paper, or how do you sit in front of your blank document and decide to just do the thing? Um, it's such a hard muscle. I don't claim to really have it. I had to pay for a class to make me do the thing, and then I finally now have a pilot. But like I was resisting that for a really long time. Like a really long time. But
Yeah,
now
I
I have
think
it.
writing is really hard, even when you have the tools and you've
Yeah.
used the tools and
Yeah.
you've been wildly successful with the tools. I think the act of writing is a challenge every single time.
Yeah.
And for anyone who gets something down on the page, it's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And it's
Um,
powerful. I'm curious to go back to kind of a little bit of what you were saying way in the beginning about putting another part of yourself aside on behalf of these artists that you were helping to foster and the work that they're trying to do. I'm curious for you when you put on a hat and you perhaps shelve another hat for a little bit. Does the hat that's shelved, like, wave to you on a daily basis? Or is it something that, like, you're really good at shelving it and you actually forget about it until you are in the muck and then somehow that, like, hat falls off a shelf and you're like, "Oh my god, oh, right, you exist."
it takes both of those forms. There
Okay.
are periods, it depends on how busy I am. If it's like
Mhm.
in the middle of a launch, it's definitely the I've forgotten that you're there.
Mhm.
I think it's the more quieter times that it's like, "Oh, yeah, wait a minute." And then every day it's like, "I should be doing that. I should be doing that. I should be doing that." And
Yeah.
then I'm not doing it. I as we are all learn more and more about ourselves, I'm I tend to skew all or nothing. I like to go all in on one thing. I don't like to switch hats often back and forth, back and forth. I really like to do one thing. And if I can't go all in on the thing, I like to put it aside until I have more time to go all in on that thing, which
Mhm.
is it's not a great system for me, because the times where I can go all in on the creative stuff is so much fewer and
Yeah.
further between. I think I've messed up that phrase. Um,
Grammar's hard. Grammar's
yeah,
really it's
yeah,
hard.
you don't need good grammar to be a good screenwriter.
No, that's where
Um,
AI is actually helpful. That's the only time. The
but
only time is
your
yeah.
characters could be bad at grammar.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's fine. But, like, there have been times where, okay, I'm going away for the weekend, and for these 3 days I'm just going to focus on writing my pilot. And I have done that for myself here and there, but that's not sustainable either.
Right.
It's breaking my own ingrained habits of how I approach stuff would is what I'm actually it's on my I'm moving into that now. This
Mhm.
is my season where I'm really pushing myself to not go in on only one thing. I really want to make my own creative scripts. I have a couple of scripts that are in different stages, and I really want to make myself focus on that as a priority. 'Cause it's the
Yeah.
only way that it gets done.
Why is the shift happening now for you?
I just reached my limit. I had a launch in my business that I expected to go a lot better, and it went really poorly, and it just felt like if I tallied up the hours I've put into this launch with the revenue that it brought in, and I could have been spending if I spent that many hours on my scripts, I just sort of was like, I'm not getting the fulfillment that I
Mhm.
want to be getting from this, or I'm not getting the like financial ROI
Mhm.
for me to make this the top and only priority. So
Yeah.
you know, I'm having a moment of like, but okay, so I'm the one doing this. I'm making these decisions. I can change the decisions. So why don't
Yeah.
I change some of the decisions to make myself happy?
Yeah. How have you felt making these decisions?
I've I relief, scared,
Yeah.
uncertain,
Mhm.
excited, like
Yeah.
all of this stuff.
Yeah. I think it's helpful to first of all, thank you for sharing so vulnerably. And second of all, I think it's a wonderful, like, human reminder that on the outside, we view things as one thing because that's all the information that we have, and really, on the inside, it's a lot it's a lot more than just that, a lot more than
Yes.
what meets the eye, And it goes back to just like offering people grace, and offering people patience to recognize that we do not fully see the whole picture ever. And even when we ask, we might not still receive the whole picture. And especially as us artists, wherever we are in the hats that we wear, coming out of a pandemic into what
Yeah.
feels like a version of another form of like pandemic movement with these strikes, like of which all of which is necessary and also still traumatic. Like we are coming
Yeah.
off of a really traumatized time in conjunction with what is already a very volatile and unpredictable life that we have all been led to choose, which is what it is, a decision, a choice. And how hard it is to sometimes let go of the things that we thought were the thing and
Yeah.
to move towards the things that we think in this season are now the thing. Um, it's a really brave thing to be able to look inward and be like, what is working and what is not working? And where am I happy and where am I not? And where can I make a shift that will move things around enough that will give me permission to maybe change the way I'm feeling if I so desire? It takes a lot to do that because it can feel really overwhelming. So I want to give you credit for that. I think it's a very hard thing to do. We can talk about it conceptually, and arguably we do it in small little ways here and there. Like I chose to eat tofu today instead of eating chicken, but like, it's big.
Yeah. And, running a business is really hard, whether it's your acting business, your
Mhm.
screenwriting business, your, coaching business. It's really hard. And like, it's the same parallel as an artist, right? It's as uncertain and unpredictable and unknown because you could have a
Mhm.
great year, 2 years revenue wise, and then you have like 3 years like what the fuck? Like none of the
Mhm.
stuff is working anymore, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of ups and downs on top of then also being someone who is an artist as well, and the ups, it's just like the never ending
Yeah.
ups and downs.
Yeah.
um and sometimes you're up for it and are really driven and ambitious and you have the energy and you want to do it, and sometimes you're like, "Ugh, I just need to pause because I'm tired."
Yeah. Yeah.
My body hurts.
Yeah. How do you give yourself permission to do that? The pausing or
It's
the
hard
privilege,
for
like the
me.
privilege around
Yes.
it too, right? Like both.
Usually I push it too far and then my body is saying like, stop it.
Mhm.
I am not great at I'm getting better at that. Um, but it's, the ambition and the tenacity that it takes to run a business, to be an artist, can lead to a level of stubbornness, which
Mhm.
can be very harmful if you're not listening to your body and you're pushing through and you're going. It's like the thing that it's the blessing and the curse of being built that way.
Yeah.
um but I think right now I'm giving myself permission. I think i I had other disappointments earlier in the year, and then it sort of like turned it around and was on the upswing again. And so now it's like to so quickly feel like back on a downswing. It was like, okay, I'm tired. I'm
Yeah.
tired and I want to take care of myself. And like maybe this is TMI, but I think it's relevant to the conversation. In January, I had a hysterectomy, which up until then, like over a decade, more than a decade, I've had fibroids and really heavy menstrual cycles, and
Mhm.
just I had about 10 days a month where I could be productive, and the rest of the time was like getting
Yeah.
my period and cramps and having to rest and cancel all my meetings.
Yeah.
And I was trapped in that cycle for like over a decade. So once I had my hysterectomy and I was like, I have all this time now. Like I have
Mm.
time, I can be consistent, I can work 4 weeks out of the month instead of 10 days. And
Yeah.
I don't have to like scramble and shove everything into this week and a half. And I think I just felt like I've got to make up for lost time and I've got to push and
Mm.
I got to build and grow. And I went all in, and
Mhm.
because I could, where I wasn't able to do that for such a long time. And that was probably the biggest thing that kept me away from pursuing creative stuff, acting and writing stuff, because I just couldn't, I'm not reliable.
Mhm.
I hope the booking is during the 7 days where I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, I think I really wanted to make up for lost time in a way that I got burnt out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, I've learned this lesson already, but I haven't implemented it. So I want to learn from mistakes I've made in the past and not push myself to burnout.
Yeah.
I want to be able to serve my clients who I love working with, and I want to be able to give them my best, and I also want to give my best to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think maybe that's part of, like, from your question earlier of like what's different about now, or how am I giving myself permission now? It's like the hysterectomy has been life-changing for me. I didn't feel like I could pursue acting anymore, to
Mhm.
try to get on a set anymore. I just wasn't physically able to
Yeah.
live out the schedule that's required and the demands and the hours, and I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason why I feel more capable of pursuing the creative stuff in a way that feels like I could actually do it without being the unreliable person that everyone hates because I can't make the shoot, and all of
Yeah.
those things that would get in the way.
I wanna hold space for you sharing in this way, so thank you again for being so vulnerable and for trusting me and this community with that, and also naming that people don't talk, especially women, we don't really talk about, our health, for obvious reasons in this country.
Yes.
Um But, I mean, it's totally not the same at all, but I froze my eggs last year, and I was incredibly vocal about it, and the reason I was incredibly vocal about it was because there was one friend of mine, who was incredibly vocal about it, and because she was incredibly vocal about it, I felt I could be, and I knew that it was an option for me, and I spent a year doing research and blah, 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 and, like, seeing if I was emotionally, physically, financially capable of doing it and saving up and all of those things, um, and if it wasn't for her talking about it, I genuinely would not have thought it was an option. And so, you being vocal about it is giving at least another human being permission to think about that for themselves. We also don't give credit where credit is due around like health being a factor for how we are able to show up. That includes mental health as well. And how, as artists, especially, and humans, especially with the volatility of our life and the life that's happening around us, um, how impactful that is on us, and to simply just survive on this planet, let alone when we have health stuff that we're
Yeah.
navigating and then we don't feel like we can talk about it, and then we don't know how to use it in I don't mean as like an excuse. I mean it just like use it for when it's real to like be the thing that is the explanation for why you're not able to show like it's a very flawed system is what I'm naming.
Yes.
And so you being able to share in this way and also share how much it's allowed you to really own all of you now is really impactful and empowering. So, congratulations for making a huge decision about your body and your
Yeah.
decisions for your body. And I also want to name that it's probably a huge adjustment, even with like
Yeah.
the relief that you have to now be living a life that you've never seen or haven't seen for many years of
Yeah.
like, oh, wait, now I actually am available for all this
Yeah.
time. And now I don't have I don't mean this as an excuse, but like the quote unquote excuse that like I'm not able to show up because I'm unable to.
Yeah.
And now what does it mean that I'm in theory able to show up?
Yeah.
I guess I want to offer, not that you asked, but I'm going to do it anyway, that like just because you have the time doesn't mean that you have to give of the time. I think
Yeah.
there's some celebrating of just like you as a human being of like, I have time for just whatever. Like,
Anything I want.
yeah. We feel like we have to get on that hamster wheel so quickly when life happens and the shift
Yes.
happens and we don't often feel like we have permission to sit with the change and just
Yeah.
that in and of itself is like the gift, just the sitting with it. This hamster wheel and the planet, and nothing ever looks the way we think it will,
Yeah.
ever. And you can plan until the cows come home. And one day those cows are just not coming home and there's geese instead. And you're like, why are geese here and not cows? And then I don't know why, but that just is the new normal. And maybe this metaphor doesn't make any sense in my brain. It does. But like, it's just never going to be the thing. And so I'm a huge proponent of saying fuck it sometimes
Yeah.
and giving to yourself. And sometimes that means pausing.
Yeah.
Um, that was a lesson I feel like I learned over the pandemic. And I feel like, not to throw everybody else under the bus, but like I was so grateful. One of the positive flip sides of the pandemic was that I learned and saw directly in its eye my hustle, of which I've always owned as like a medal for myself, like, "Oh my god, you're
Yeah.
so good at hustling, you do
Yeah.
everything." And it's like,
Mhm.
"Wait, I got to pause and I got
Yeah.
to evaluate." And I realized, A, it's not healthy, B, I don't wanna be doing it, and C, I was only doing it because I thought I had to and I got really good at it, and then I liked being good at the thing, which is not what I really wanted to begin with. And it's hard when the hamster wheel is like the wheel of society and you wanna be a participant, and it's also a real gift to oneself to recognize that you get to decide when you want to step on and off of it when you can, obviously recognizing there's like a level of privilege in that, but like you don't always have to be on the hamster wheel because everybody else is.
Yeah.
As a human being, pre or post hysterectomy, when you experienced loss in some way, whether it's time, whether it's in your business, whether it's as an artist that you weren't able to show up the way you quote unquote wanted to, how do you process those things?
I mean, I think pre-hysterectomy, there was no processing
Mhm.
because there just wasn't I either was felt good enough to be hyper productive or I was like on the couch in debilitating pain.
Mhm.
It was like those were the two speeds. And
Yeah.
when I was on the couch, it just was like the rage of like this again. And why do I need to go through this again? And why aren't there? I resisted a hysterectomy for a long time as like my own act of rebellion because I think it's bullshit that that's really the only option. Like it's go on the pill or cut an organ out of your body. Those are
Yeah.
the two options for women. And there's really no curiosity in medical field. There are doulas and herbalists and acupuncturists and all kinds of people who do help treat the root cause of some of these things. But the medical industry is not interested in being curious about women's bodies and the root causes of why so many women have these issues in the first place or how to help them. So I was enraged. I would just be enraged about that. And those were my two speeds. It was like
Yeah.
work, 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 or like be enraged and in pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I think I've been in go like hyper productive mode. That's just what I've been in with my business. We had a bunch of events and launches and just all this deliverables that had to get done, which can keep you very busy and not
Mhm.
really having to think about your feelings or anything but work. And now that we've sort of come through a lot of that stuff, there is more time and there is more space to, like, I started doing morning pages again, which has been really good and
Mhm.
helpful, and just kind of coming back to practices I used to have before I got really busy.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, this is really great. So I'm processing now through some of those tools
Yeah.
and just walking. I like getting into any kind of exercise habit wasn't possible because it was like stop, start, stop, start. So any kind of consistency, it just wasn't possible. I walk like most days, which has just been a great gift. And that's a great, just walking like is such a good expander, or like, you get out of the house and the way your brain works and take a different route, and there's just, I find that very peaceful and calming, which has been good, and it's getting me moving, which is so, if you're not moving, you're not moving. If you're
Yeah.
not moving in your body, you're not moving in your life.
Yeah.
So that's been a huge benefit of the
Yeah.
hysterectomy as well, just being able to move.
Yeah. As we begin to wind down our time, is there anything that is on your heart? Or and is there anything that you wish you had known earlier?
I mean, there are so many things I could say. Should have left that boyfriend. Should have left that boy. Like lots of life lessons,
Interpersonal, yeah, life stuff.
interpersonal things I wish I had learned young as a younger person. Um, I think for me, storytelling is really, really impactful and a powerful tool and something I gravitate towards and something that I love. And I also see it as it is a way if you are the writer, it's a way of processing through stuff
Mhm.
that sometimes can't be processed any other way. So for example, I'm writing a script about a killer uterus,
Mhm.
uh, from what
Surprise.
I
Wow,
went
why would
through,
you write
right?
that? Yeah, that's so
Yes,
strange. Is
from
that
what
personal
I
to you?
yes. And that, it's a good tool to kind of process some of these things. But, something that I wish I had known earlier that I hope other people understand or have like a way to deal with is like I'm in my 40s now, and I was not at all prepared for how much loss comes with this age. And as you age beyond the 40s, like, of course, people have losses earlier than that, but I'm starting to go through the loss of like family member by family member. And it's like, oh, this is just the beginning of like this wave of grief. And then the anticipatory grief of like losing more people that I love. And that's just been, I didn't know that that's what was coming
Yeah,
in the 40s. Because, oh, women, you stop giving a fuck and you're comfortable in your skin and it's a great time of empowerment, and it's really fucking painful. And there's
yeah,
so much grief.
yeah,
Grief is just like an ever present part of my life now in a way that I never could have imagined when I was younger. Not to say that people don't have grief when they're younger, like,
yeah.
but it's just become really, really pronounced. And like, I just want to write films like capturing the essence of all the people that I love and my family, and like as a legacy of like thanking them and loving them. And, for
Mhm.
me, storytelling is a tool that I am leaning on to kind of process through some of these things. Um, I should probably get a therapist too. I don't think there's
Absolutely.
other ways to process. Um, but yeah, I think like that's the big thing that's present for me right now is no one prepares you for how much loss you will go through in your life.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
and
I
how
don't think
precious things are.
yes, how precious things are, how in an instant things change. And the pain of that and the cruelty of that is like a fresh wound every time.
Yeah.
I'm not at the point where I can accept that this is just normal and this is like what's
Mhm.
coming. It's like a fresh wound every time.
Yeah.
And what my hope is that we can build into our culture like much more acceptance, acknowledgement of, and embracing of people who are in grief
Mhm.
because you can't just go back to work.
Yeah.
You can't just get back to normal. Like that's not possible.
Yeah.
And I think I'm gonna have to write a script about it of like an example of how to support, especially in the United States. I think other cultures are more they allow the pain and of the grief and the ugliness of that pain and the wailing. And there are other cultures that I think do handle grief in a really beautiful way. But like in the US, it's not. So when are you coming back to work? How can you
Yeah.
make us more money? And like take all the time you need, but when are you coming back?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again for sharing. No, I mean it.
Blah.
No, I mean it. I really I it feels in some way like not that this is why you're doing it, but it feels like validating to me that we've created a space here that you feel safe to do that, and to share. And for me, I am only really interested in people being truthful and honest. And I learn the most about myself. I learn the most about myself in
Yeah.
the world. I learn how to be more empathetic. I learn how to listen more when I hear other people actually showing up and being brave and vulnerable. So, um, I mean, it's a gift to have that as a part of who you are, to be able to share that with strangers who are listening and with me. No, it is, and so many of us can resonate with a version of what you're talking about. I think there's also this like real danger in society about comparative
Mhm.
trauma, grief
Yes.
situations of like, oh, well, I'm going through this and you're going through this. And because yours seems worse than mine, then mine shouldn't take up space.
Yeah.
Or actually, I look at yours and in comparison to mine, it's not as bad. And so mine, like, we're trying to pin these feelings against each other when it's everyone's feelings are valid and everyone's feelings hold space and are true and real. And what a beautiful world we could be living in if we just allow people to honor those experiences and feelings more deeply and hold the space for everyone to be where they are.
Yeah.
It's a world I wish we lived in currently, and I'm aiming to like continue holding spaces, like at least in this one we can, where people can own what they're navigating. And that is really empowering for others to hear and then see themselves in that. We all go through versions of grieving all the time. And then sometimes it just hits you in the face and it's too much. And then how
Yeah.
do you take time for yourself and those that you love to show up so that when you are quote unquote ready, of which I actually want to like argue, I don't know when you're ever ready. You know what I mean? Like what does that even mean? Like ready for what? Like, but like when you are somehow more full enough to try again and show up again. Um, yeah, I think that's a really it will happen. It will hit you in the face.
Yeah.
It'll hit you in the face.
Yeah.
Um, I am so grateful for the journey of this conversation. Um, and if anybody wants to work with you and hear more or reach out, what within your own boundaries is the best way for people to find you?
Um, to get an idea of how I work with people, you can go to writeyourdreamrole.com, and there's a great training about how to start developing those characters that I talked about in terms of thinking about the arc of your plot. And then if you want to connect, you can always DM me on Instagram. My handle is at the only Emily Grace.
Are you the only Emily Grace?
No, there's like a bunch of Emily Graces.
I love
And
it. You're like, "I am owning that this is the
it's
only
right.
one. It's the only
I
one that matters."
I think I might be the only one whose last name is Grace. There's a
Okay.
lot of people with a middle name and then they call themselves Emily
Yeah,
Grace,
that tracks.
but I am the only Emily Grace. The
Beautiful.
end.
Thank you so much for being in this space with me in this way. And I'm really grateful for, yeah, the vulnerability that you shared and the things that you shared and how you expressed it. And so it really means a lot that you trusted me and trusted this community and trusted this space to do so.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been quite satisfying despite emotionally on a roller coaster.
I mean, if there's nothing else that we learned from this conversation is that literally everything's a roller coaster. So you better get
Yes.
comfortable at being on
Embrace
one.
it.